Okay, folks, on with the final fans pulse of episode 16, remarkably. Okay, let's get into this one, and this is the one that received most votes in terms of a topic that you guys wanted us to discuss tonight. And on the back of the last discussion topic, please, I don't want this to sound like we're having a real go or a real negative critique of British Speedway. It's not meant to be that. It's all well intentioned and hopefully food for thought, and maybe even a little bit of thought leadership, a little bit of feedback, because we are supporters as well. Anyway, let's get on with it. So Speedway fans have been on this journey for a while, some a lifetime of many decades. You know, we've watched Speedway for a lifetime, we've watched Speedway for decades. Some supporters out there haven't been on the Speedway journey for too many seasons. However, there are certain things about the sport, and I'm talking about British Speedway in particular, that frustrates us, that's things that we wrestle with, concepts that we wrestle with, and things that don't sit wonderfully well, particularly when you try to introduce new supporters. You know, we've all encouraged neighbours or workmates to come along. They ask questions as they're entitled to do, and sometimes you feel a little bit embarrassed of the answers. So guys, we're going to talk about should Speedway take a credibility check. So like I've said already, sometimes when you're inside the sport, you get a little bit nose blind to certain flaws and imperfections. And however, you know, sometimes other people allow you to see things through fresh eyes, or you know, your own frustrations allow you to see things. And bringing that back to Speedway, what I'm hoping that we can begin to talk about and consider is, you know, once again, not for the first time, with one eye on 2026. There is an opportunity for British Speedway to re-engineer itself in some shape or form. In the last section, the last part, we spoke about meeting formats as an example of that. How about, though, trying to lessen the frustrations around some things that test the credibility of the sport? So I'm going to kick off by introducing the biggest single issue for me personally, which is, and I understand the reason for it, but it is doubling up and doubling down of riders. So British Speedway has been on this journey. I think, you know, being quite critical about it, you know, mismanagement has been a root cause of it. Short-sightedness has been a root cause of it. Swedish Speedway, Polish Speedway have never suffered from this. It's endemic to British Speedway, and we have allowed a reliance, a dependency for many seasons now on essentially sharing riders between the top flight and the second division. That's the frustration. That is a huge credibility challenge for the sport, and it must play a role in damaging the sport's ability to grow domestic crowds. Carol Johnson, I'm going to bring you in first. Oh no, please don't bring me in first. Carol Johnson, you know, you've been there, you've worn the t-shirt. You have been around the AGM tables a few times when some of this stuff might have been discussed or nodded through for the following season. I know you'll be as transparent as ever, Carol. What's your views on doubling up, doubling down?
Well, we don't like it as promoters, as team managers, as supporters, and we're all supporters of Speedway first and foremost. We don't like it, but we haven't got an option as it stands because of, obviously, we know lack of riders. Okay, we've probably made that right for our own back by the amount of teams that we've had over the years in the top division, second division, and then not having enough riders to fill them spaces. So we've had to use the doubling up, doubling down. It's not great. Yes, it's. I touched on this a while back. You can have a rider. We'll use Chris Harris as example because he does a lot of doubling up, doubling down because of his quality. So you go to a championships meeting this year and pay £18 to go and watch Chris Harris. You go to a Premiership meeting, you pay 20. He's paid different figures for both leagues, but you're getting the same product. for me, it doesn't sit right. Why would I go and watch a Premiership meeting to watch Chris Harris when I can watch him for his Championship team and pay less money and get basically the same rider? That's where I'm at with it. I don't like it. Yes, there's a necessity. We have to have it because of the lack of riders. Now, that's down to us, and we keep saying about bringing the British riders through. The Championship should be that field that we bring the young British riders through. The best riders in the UK, whether they're from abroad or English-based riders, should be in the Premiership. Your then reserves, second strings in the Premiership should be your top riders or your second strings in the Championship, in my opinion. So there should be a difference between the two leagues. I don't think there's a big enough difference now. There probably is now with the top riders in, but over the last few years there hasn't been, and that's now started to open up. But you've still got the majority of Premiership riders riding in the Championship, and for me that's not right. It should be your up-and-coming British riders in the Championship, and then they're fed through into the Premiership. That would give more opportunity to British riders or lesser riders. Don't have to be British, could be foreign riders, but it gives them the opportunity to have more meetings. And I think, that's where we should be at. I see owners, promoters, they want as much money as they can get out of the sport. I understand that. It's a business to them, to these people. They need to make money. But like you say, credibility of the sport also has to be protected. And we've talked about it for years, the doubling up and the guests, and it just doesn't make sense for me. Yes, we've worked it to our advantage over the years as promoters, team managers. We've worked the system to our advantage as a team, but it's not ideal, is it? That's not what we want to see. We don't want to see, all these riders every week. It's just not the way we want to do things. And but how do we solve it?
Stuart, Rob, I'll bring you on this one. Carroll's, as he always does, make some sound and valid points. And British Speedway got itself into this pickle in comparison to Sweden or Poland, right? But rather than try to resolve it, and we've had many years now to try and unravel it a little bit. We haven't. Although, possibly, with the enforced league restructuring that might arrive for 2026, if there is one big league, Stuart Robson, we can't have doubling up and doubling down. So by hook or by crook, we've got to resolve this pretty damn quick, Stuart.
Yes, we have, and a lot of I know when I was a rider, when I was at first, I think when the double up, double down system came in, if I remember rightly, wasn't it only open to British riders under a certain average? And I think I fitted. I can't remember if I fitted immediately, but I certainly fitted at some point. And it worked. It was great for me as a rider to do that, because at the time I wasn't racing in European leagues, so this was my way of getting extra meetings in. When you're riding abroad in the Swedish league, Polish league, Danish league, Italian league, whatever it might be, it isn't so bad. You don't really want to ride in both. But when you're just doing UK, when you're just doing the British league, it's a really good thing to be able to do as a rider, because it really does boost your earnings. It does boost your expenses as well, but it's a good thing to be able to bring that extra income and have the extra practice, because there would be times when I was just doing one league, I remember times when I would have 2 weeks without a meeting, and then I'd be racing against riders when I went back to my next meeting who'd been riding sort of 5 days a week, and you think, well, they're really on the ball here, and now I'm a bit off because I've had 2 weeks off. So it's a good thing as a rider to do, but like Carl says, do you really want to see that same rider and pay extra money to see that same rider? Yeah. It's a really tough one, this one, and to bring it as one league, obviously that won't be the case. It'll cut the meetings for a lot of riders. The guys who are just solely UK based, it will really cut their meetings down a lot. unless they ride in the sort of the National League, or if they get some open meetings of some sort, then that might help as well. But it could really cut a lot of riders' meetings down.
But well, Big Mac, I bring you into this this discussion about doubling up and doubling down. You know, to Robbo's point, you know, there's been many years. I don't know how many years, but we've had doubling up, doubling down for many seasons now. Have the riders benefited? Yes, because they've had more meetings, more earning opportunities. Have the clubs and promoters benefited from it? I'm not so sure they have, and they've had the added injury risk element of it because one of their team members is riding based in another league in the same country for another club. Have supporters benefited from it? Maybe the lower league clubs, the championship level clubs, might get to see the odd rider that they might not otherwise have seen potentially. But beyond that, I'm not sure supporters have benefited from it. And final point, and then I'll let you come in, Stuart. Robbo mentioned there about 2026. If we do go one big league, that should automatically mean that there'll be more meetings. Yes, it'll all be contained within one league rather than two leagues, but riders shouldn't be disadvantaged hugely. They should have a reasonable number of meetings to race and earn from.
Absolutely, Derek. Every day the riders, a lot of them are there for their passion, but there's also a lot of them that want to earn the money and get paid. And, like Hans touched earlier on, when he was 17, came to the UK, he could earn a lot of money, be professional. And I think nowadays, the doubling up, the doubling down, I'm with Carl on this. I don't like it. I think it gets a bit processional. From a rider's point of view, if you're on a bit of a crest of a wave and you're doubling up and you're making a few quid, that's the bottom line, you're doing well. But when we started out racing, the three of us, we had Division 1, Division 2, and you didn't get riders doubling up, doubling down, whatever you want. And I'll go back to when I rode for Edinburgh at Powder Hall. We had such good juniors, if you like, that the number 7, which was predominantly myself, Mike Luthwaite, whoever it was, would race the second half meeting against some of the up-and-coming riders. And the decisions then would be made for these riders to go into the main body of the team. But I think now, with the lack of riders that we've got in the UK, I think it's proven to be a challenge for clubs who they can't field a 1 to 7 that's going to be the same every week. They've got to bring somebody from Oxford, bring somebody from whoever, Bellevue. And I think that the sport, if it goes one league, to save the sport, I think it would need to, there'll be more meetings in it, but I think it would be better that, because everybody's their own team, they're not doubling up, they're not getting told that they're not racing here because of that team, and I think that the politics come into it as well, because if you're racing for a top 2, top 4, top 6 finish, and you want that rider from that other team, how many times have we heard of riders going sick? How many times have we heard of riders, whatever you want to call it, not turning up for meetings, a problem, and they've rode for other teams? I just think that let's get back to the way it used to be. Give us a team that you're signed for. That's your club. 1 to 7, race that way all the way through the season, because, like you say, doubling up and doubling down is good for the riders personally if they earn a lot of money through it. But I just think for fans, they get to see the same one every other week. And because of the lack of teams that we've got in the leagues now, you're seeing these riders 2-3 times in a season, whereas before you would only see them once, maybe twice a year. It gave you more, you're more passion to watch these riders in, because it's like Carl says, you go and see Chris at £18, or you can go and see him at £20. Well, you know where I'm going. Don't get me wrong, the £20, they might have a different calibre of meeting in it with other riders, but it's like, right, let's go and pick for that. I remember racing when we were, in the 90s, and you used to have like tours, southern tours, northern tours. You'll remember them, Carl, Robbo. You'd do Rye House, Exeter, Poole. We do one night a week now to suit the Polish teams. And I think because we're bound to Poland, because we are, we need to get back to the way that who wants to go to Speedway on a Monday night with the family after they've went back after the weekend off? Yeah. They're in work on a Monday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that was the days for it. Friday, Saturdays were the days, but we're overpowered now by Poland because they pay the most money, which it proves that the desire for some riders is rather to go and earn £5,000 than ride at home and earn £3,000 or £2,000 or whatever you want to call it. But I just think that the sport needs to have a bit of a shake. It does. I mean, Nigel Crabtree would be absolutely in his element tonight. He really would. So, Nigel, I'm sorry, but I took your place tonight. But honestly, I agree with Carl. You know, Robbo, I agree with the situation with the riders getting the extra earnings, but 100% behind Carl. You know, it's not good for the fans, and I think clubs need to have a 1-7 that is a 1-7.
You know, sure, it's become such an accepted part of the sport in this country that, you know, regular fans or supporters who have stayed the course are probably slightly blind to it, you know, in fairness. But let's see what transpires over the course of the winter, because if the direction of travel is one big league, then we can't have double up and double and down. That's going to be a thing of the past. Let's move on to another niggle, another credibility challenge, in my view at least. But I'm sure I'm not alone on this. And I completely acknowledge that Speedway is an injury-prone sport just by the nature of it, and obviously that means from time to time, unfortunately, teams have to employ guest riders to cover for injured riders. However, you know, it's not been uncommon that some clubs, some promotions have taken advantage of it, and I'm going to cite Plymouth, who for a number of seasons ran for the full season with Edward Kennett or Nico Cavati on the injured list, and brought in, you know, top quality guests, home and away, you know, horses for courses. So there was some manipulation. Plymouth fans, you might disagree, feel free to comment. Poland operate pool systems. They don't have guest riders. I think Sweden must be the same. They may have pools of riders rather than guest riders. However, I've got a particular case to make around the use of guest riders, which I do think tests Speedway's credibility. And fortunately, this doesn't happen every too often. But I'm going to cite the case of this weekend past, where Glasgow visited Berwick. Right, my own club, Glasgow, visited Berwick. On the Glasgow side, there were 3 riders called into international duty. Berwick had 1 rider called into international duty. So 4 programme riders were missing due to international call-ups. Both sides also were operating rider replacement, so there was only 12 riders who took part in the meeting, 3 guests, so 25% of the rider field were guests, all because 4 riders had been called up, very encouragingly, to international duty. In that particular event, right, my argument is, for the sake of credibility of the sport and to protect supporters' value for money, that the BSPL should have stepped in and instructed that meeting had to be rescheduled. So it wasn't because of injury; it was because of international call-ups. And I would, in that particular scenario, and there's been similar examples of it in the past, not injury-related absences, but, you know, international meetings or overseas speedway clashes, which has rendered riders unavailable to compete. Carol, I'm going to come back to you. I think it's your turn to step back in. Do you have any sympathy with my argument, Carol?
Yes, I do. If you're a supporter of Glasgow or Berwick or whoever it may be, Plymouth, Peterborough, when you go and watch your team, you want to watch your team. Appreciate riders get injured, so guests do have to cover in that respect, unless you're going to go for a pool of riders, which is very difficult because we know there's a shortage of riders. So where do you get your pool of riders from? Now, on the flip side of that, and this is from my promoter's side, not my Speedway supporters side, most teams, most clubs are given dates at the start of the season from their landowners. We were certainly one of them. We had, say, 15 dates over the year. They were given to us before the AGM, because obviously your fixtures. If we had a meeting cancelled for whatever reason, it was very, very difficult for us to rearrange a fixture. The only way we could do it is we would, for argument's sake, take 20 dates at the start of the season and use a certain amount of them as call-off dates, rain-off dates. So the likes of Berwick, they're probably in the same position because they don't own the track and they're dictated to by somebody else. They would have so many dates that they could run on. Now, if they cancel Saturday, they might not have another date available to them for the next month, 6 weeks, that they could fit that in. Yeah. Now, different with Glasgow, you boys own your own track. You can ride whenever you want. But Rob will know from his Coventry days and from his Newcastle days, they would be in the same position as what we was because of the dog tracks. They would be dictated to by the dogs that they only run on so many dates a year. Now, there's a lot of tracks like that. A lot of tracks have to run like that. So to cancel dates is very difficult for certain clubs. So, you know, from my promoter side, it's like we had so many dates. If we didn't fit them in, we were struggling at the end of the season to get dates in. We would always be chased. Oh, we got to fit this in. We got to fit that in. Else you get a club fine. The club get fined for not fulfilling the fixtures. So if you didn't have the dates to fulfill them fixtures, you get a club fine. So it's like, where do you go with it?
Yeah,
if we all owned our own stadiums and we could race whatever night we wanted to, it'd be brilliant. But a lot of tracks are restricted to what dates they can run and how many fixtures they can run over a season, and that is a massive sticking point for a lot of clubs. A lot of teams that don't own their own stadiums or their own tracks are in that position, and so I have sympathy with them. And I can understand from a supporter's point of view is why wasn't it cancelled? For me, yes, it should have been. But if you haven't got a date to put it in, can you afford to? Yeah. So it's a really tricky one. You know, I'm with everyone. If you've not got your team, let's cancel the meeting. But hang on a minute, we can't fit it in because we haven't got the dates to fit it in. So we can't.
Yeah, no, listen, I hear you, Karen, and obviously that's a practical issue that some clubs would have, and of course we've got to recognise that. But I just feel, you know, without being too specific about without being too specific, you know, I just feel sometimes clubs are almost forced. You know, you must go ahead and run this fixture even though you've got half a team available to you, and it's not fair on the club. Because if the riders are injured or called up into international duty, and it's not great for the paying supporters. Again, I'm thinking about the value for money for supporters.
Yeah, and just going on from that, I'll go back to us, you know, at Peterborough in 2018 when we absolutely trounced the league. We lost half our team to injuries going into the playoffs, and you know, we wasn't league champions because we had so many injuries. You know, we fielded a team against Lakeside that we had 2 National League riders come in because we couldn't replace them with anybody. Is that good for the public? No, 100% it isn't. Was it good for us? No, it wasn't. Did we have to deal with it? Yes, we did. Was we told we had to deal with it? Yes. We couldn't cancel the dates. They were the only dates that were available to us. We had to ride, no questions asked. Yeah. And that's not what we want. You know, long-term injuries, you can't do anything about it. You know, but that's not ideal for British Speedway, is it? It's not. Yeah. It's not credible for British Speedway to be in that position, you know. So I can see it from both sides. You know, from a Speedway supporter side, you know, why are we not cancelling this meeting because we've got half a team? But then from the promoter side, it's like, well, we can't cancel it because we've got no dates. Yeah. So we've been in that position at Peterborough. We've been in that position. We've looked at things and gone, look, we should be cancelling this. Look, and I'm going to hold my hands up and I will say we've cancelled meetings when we shouldn't have done and declared that it's rained. You know, But but that protects us. It's the only way it can protect us. It might look. I've got nothing to lose. I've got nothing to gain on here. We're doing it. I've always been honest and open with my supporters at Peterborough, and I'll be honest and open with anyone. We've done that to protect us as a club.
Yeah.
To do that, because we're looking at what happens if we get beat? We get out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's rain.
It damages the business then, doesn't it? Yeah.
100%. 100%. It's a business at the end of the day. Yes, we're there to, we're a spectacle. We've got supporters that want to come and see, but, and we've had a lot of stick over the years for cancelling meetings. But sometimes you have to do that. And I'm being honest with everyone. We have to do that, and I'm not going to hide it.
Carol, listen, show me a Speedway club who's never done that in their lifetime.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Robbo, we'll bring you back in. Robbo, another niggle, another credibility issue for me, and it's maybe in the same territory approximately as we've just been talking about, is where the hometown club, the staging club, right? They've got your fixture coming up this week. You're 2 or 3 days away from it, or thereabouts. For reasons that you haven't shared with your supporters, that you're going to be minus your two of your heat leaders or whatever it might be, right? You've got some real rider availability issues, right? There's nothing you can do about it. You can't solve it. You're going to have to run the fixture with a lightweight team or a makeshift team. And the credibility issue for me is that the transparency and the openness and the line of sight that some clubs don't provide their supporters with. So many supporters turn up on race day or don't know about the team changes because they haven't been across social media, for example. And that can't be good for that's not a good situation either, Stu. I understand why it might be, because the promotion wants supporters to turn up and pay through the gate. Of course they do, because it's a business and they need the income. But again, being customer centric about it, it can't be the right answer.
It's not, and like you say, I totally understand why they do it, because they do need the money in at the end of the day, regardless. But it's not. You need maybe a bit more transparency with your fans. You've got to keep them in the loop with things, because it's going to frustrate them even more, and there's more chance of them not coming back because of that. You're going to, I'm not going to go back there. They just did this. They didn't tell us. No one knew. We've paid full price. We're only getting half a team. Totally agree with it. If that is the case, totally agree with it and understand. So definitely more transparency there. You've got to be open and give the fans a choice, because at least then they've got a choice, and it's their choice to go and pay the money or not, basically.
Indeed.
It's really frustrating for the club. But
of course it is, yeah.
You've got to look at the long term, not just that one particular meeting. Ideally, we did it a few years back, run a squad system like it's been mentioned. Squad system. I remember being with Newcastle, and me and Bjarni Pedersen, can't remember what year it was now. We shared the number 1 jacket. And it was great. I loved that. It worked really well for both me and Bjarni, and the Newcastle fans liked it because Bjarni was massively popular in Newcastle. He's really, really, really popular with the fans there. Whether I was as popular as him, I don't know, but it worked for me as well. I got quite a few meetings out of it, and it was a great thing. But there was probably a few more riders around then.
Yeah,
Whether we have that availability of riders, like has been mentioned, to do that, I don't know. And it's doing individual deals with the riders, because a lot of riders want sign-on fees. Mm-hmm. This is just a number plucked out of the head. They might want $5,000 sign-on fee, and okay, so then the other rider who shares that same jacket, he might want $5,000 sign-on fee. And all of a sudden, your number 1 has become twice as expensive in that respect at the beginning of the season as what they would normally be. So that's a difficult situation, and you've obviously got to work something out. I don't really know what the answer to that is either, but there's got to be a solution to it at some point, and there's got to be and the other thing they want is they want to guarantee the meetings. I want to be guaranteed at least 10 meetings.
Yeah.
then okay, yeah, fair enough. But it depends on your form. As a rider, you need to hit that form. If you're not riding, if you're not hitting form, but your counterpart is who's sharing the race jacket, he's on top form, then they're going to get the meetings, understandably, because they're going to get the points. So it's, I think if they could do the squad system with numbers of riders, not just 2 riders per number, like maybe it's a choice of 2, 3, 4 riders per number, that would possibly work, but I don't know. It's another hard one. It's something that needs to be trialed to see if it works, because you don't know. On paper it might work, great, but in practice it might just be a complete flop. But I know when I did it with Newcastle, with Bjarni as myself and him at number 1 in the early 2000s, it worked well. I think it worked well, and I think the club were happy with both of us. The fans seemed to be happy with both of us. We both were on good form, and it kind of worked. But that was just one number. You kind of need that for every number, not just your number 1.
No, it's really interesting, Stuart, and I've long since forgotten about that particular season. But it proves that the concept is workable, it's valid, and maybe this might not be right here, right now, but there might always be a pool of unattached riders who clubs can draw from to have some sort of pooling contingency. Big Mac, I'm going to bring you in on the last bit of discussion on episode 16. My final credibility check, Stuart, and it's maybe an awkward one, and I'm not for 1 second suggesting that clubs do this with any intention behind it, but in this day and age, we talked many episodes ago about weather forecasts and all the tech that's there to keep an eye fairly accurately these days on weather, etc. But some clubs will start meetings against the weather forecast, and right from the off, you can tell, because of the track conditions to begin with, never mind the overhead conditions, you can tell that the objective is pretty much to race through to 10 heats and call a halt, right, to get the result. Perhaps for the reason that Carol mentioned earlier, because they're obligated to, or they have a finite number of home meetings that they can accommodate. But so my credibility my credibility niggle is, Stuart, is in that particular circumstance, I think we want to discourage clubs from even starting meetings when the track conditions at the start of the meeting and the weather forecast in combination make it pretty hard to get to heat 10, never mind beyond it.
100%. I think that, like Carl had mentioned there about dates, it's difficult from both sides of the fence. Plus, what you've got to think about as well is if you are going to a meeting at 6:30 at Ashfield and you look at the weather forecast, are you going to go? Are you going to go and pay the money to go and stand in the rain that you know is going to be there? Do the fans get a say in it? They shouldn't be starting these meetings. Obviously, riders have their say in it. And when you've driven from, I don't know, say, let's be say, Eastbourne to Glasgow, do you want to get back? You don't, do you? Is it worth doing those 10 heats just to get through that meeting so that you've not got 20 hours driving again? You've not got the bike who's going to be muddy, messy. There's so many different factors, Derek, but I think nowadays to run a meeting in such weather conditions is down to the riders. That's the bottom line. The riders will say, I want to do it, I don't want to do it. And I think the days of driving up to Glasgow from Eastbourne, knowing the weather forecast is bad, is gone, because Glasgow, I think, are quite confident at cancelling maybe on the mornings, Derek, maybe the day before, because they know the weather in Glasgow is going to be typical Scottish weather. It's going to be absolutely lashing down. And the fans want to go and watch a meeting, but not in the rain. And we all know that most stadiums haven't got overcover heat covers. Stadiums for the rain, and I just think that it can be a farce, and the credibility is definitely out the window when it comes to that. The fans want to go and watch 15 heats of racing. They want it entertained, and is 10 heats entertaining in the rain? No. And let's be serious, in that 10 heats, is there going to be much racing? There'll be crashes, there'll be people falling off, frustrations. I just think it's definitely one that I would agree with you on, Derek.
It's not speedway as we know it, Stuart, when conditions are poor like that. Well, there, Bar, listen, that brings us to the end of a marathon, episode 16. I don't know if we as a team have any credibility left with you guys out there. Please tell us how we've done. We've tried to surface a few, and be transparent and honest about some credibility issues that we share. Hopefully, your opinion on in terms of British Speedway could do better in some places. All of it is pretty resolvable, I would suggest. We don't like to set impossible challenges. I'm not going to expect British Speedway to fix the world, but you know, without too much overheads or thinking or planning, I'm sure that we could make a better job as a collective around some of those things. If there are any credibility checks that we didn't mention that you would like to raise with us or share with us, you know what to do. Please keep across our social media output. Please be as active as you can to help us grow the 360 Speedway family. We really appreciate all of your interactions and all of the work that you do out there to help bring us to the attention of other Speedway fans. Stuart Robson, Stuart McDonald, Carol Johnson, thank you for lasting the course on episode 16. We've done a lot of talking tonight. I think we'll all be exhausted and off for an early night. Out there, 360 speedsters, keep trackside, keep drinking in your fix of Speedway. Get trackside to your local club. Give your club your support off track and on. Have a good week. Look after yourselves. See you next week. Bye bye.